With us today is Duc Nguyen Abrahamson. Duc is the Executive Director for the Asian-Pacific-American Chamber of Commerce in Farmington Hills, Michigan. This Vietnamese immigrant and mother of three joins us to share her personal journey as well as the growth of Asian-Pacific business across the United States. Duc, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
Great. So in 1975, you were a very small person.
Yes.
And something really traumatic happened to your family. Can you tell us that story?
Yes. I was about 5 weeks old. My dad came home from service, told my mom to pack up the kids. We're going. And
this is during the Vietnam War?
This is during the Vietnam War, and we were in Saigon. And my mom packed me up. She swaddled me in a little baby blanket and safety pinned me to her shirt. She packed up a bag of noodles and a bag of clothes. My dad had my older sister, and my grandfather had my brother, and we left. We went to shore. And while we were on the beach, my mom was running towards the ship that we were supposed to board. She got knocked over, and people started stampeding over her on the beach. And every time somebody stepped on her back, she would dip in the water. And because she had safety pinned me to her shirt, I would dip in the water. And when she would try to push up so that I would be able to breathe still and be above the water line. For some reason, somehow, she called out, and my dad heard her throughout all the other ruckus and noise that was going on, and found her, picked her up, and put her on the boat.
Wow.
She had lost the bags that she had packed, and she felt like she saved my life by safety pinning me to her shirt.
Sure, sure. And that's such a primal instinct for parents, is
Yes.
to protect their young ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So we were on a fishing boat that was not a running fishing boat. It was broken down. I think my mom told me that there were about 2,000 people crammed on that boat, like one next to the other. There was no space to move.
And people were fleeing for their lives,
Yes.
especially military
Yes.
members, because there was, either imprisonment or worse,
Right.
waiting for them if they were captured.
Right. And my grandfather and my dad were both in the military, and my brother, my dad's brother, my uncle as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of military on that boat, that ship. It was like I said, it was a non-functioning ship, and the only thing that worked on that ship was the radio. So while we floated in international waters,
Drifting.
They would send out SOS signals. They were drifting for about 3 days and 3 nights, and then at that point you start dehydration. You start starving. You start feeling like this is how I'm going to die.
And especially profound for younger children.
Yes, and my mom, just giving birth to me weeks before, watching me dwindle away, watching my sister and my brother struggle.
Yeah.
She felt that this was the end for all of us.
Sure.
And at that point, when she thought that this is going to be it, a ship from Denmark came and rescued us.
Mm.
Yeah, they heard the SOS call, and then they turned their ship around, and they came in, and they rescued us.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And what thoughts was your mom having while?
She basically, at that moment, she said that she was at her lowest, and then the ship came. So at that point, she's like, I'll never give up again. I will continue to fight this fight because God will provide. That was the lowest moment that she's ever had, and she felt like there will never be a moment that is as low as that.
Yeah. And I think that sense, especially among the refugee population, that sense of courage and fortitude is really prevalent. Is an instinct that people evolve. Like, this is survival.
Yes.
We will get through this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Fast forward, you landed in Michigan.
Well, yes. So a wonderful church from Michigan sponsored my whole entire family.
In what city?
They were the church is from Pontiac, Michigan, and they sponsored us, and we followed them to Michigan. And they found us a little apartment where we lived. The church ladies would come over and try to teach English. They didn't know how to speak Vietnamese. We didn't know how to speak English. It was, a great time, just getting together. They'd come over, we'd feed them, and we have no idea what they're saying. But
you could recognize goodwill
yes,
in people's faces.
Yes, it was definitely goodwill. Yeah. They helped find us jobs. They helped my mom find a job. My mom worked at a dry cleaners where the dry cleaners discovered that she was a seamstress, so she had skills, and she would fix some buttons or hem some pants. Next thing you know, she's fixing the bridal gowns that come in that were damaged. And one thing led to another. Fast forward even further, she opens up her own bridal salon. So it is a struggle, but I feel like every single thing that happened, she felt like this is an opportunity for me to learn. This is an opportunity, this is a challenge that I need to take on and move forward. How am I going to survive in a world where I don't know, this is not the language, I don't know anybody, I have no family, no friends here, and I don't have any money. How am I going to make sure that my children are going to be successful? And she took every opportunity that was presented in front of her, and she ran with it.
Sure. So what were the challenges that you remember growing up in an immigrant family surrounded by a lot of white people?
I was very lucky. I feel like my immigration story as a refugee is much different from a lot of people because I don't remember a lot of the struggles. I don't remember the heartache. And if there are memories that I do remember, because I was just an infant, they're fond memories. Okay. But some of the struggles that I do remember is really the language barrier, because my family is has a lot of pride in being Vietnamese, has a lot of pride in our culture, and we only spoke Vietnamese at home because everywhere else we went, we were speaking English. Sure. So this is the only opportunity for me to learn or speak Vietnamese was at home.
And a real comfort that your parents could just
yes.
be themselves.
Be themselves, yes, yeah. Absolutely. And so we only spoke Vietnamese at home, and I only spoke English at school. There was no other place that I could speak Vietnamese other than at home. So there was that separation for me, that the two different worlds, I really lived in two different worlds in the same place. Sure. My Vietnamese world and my American world.
As you got older, you started thinking about your future. And your mom had different ideas about your career.
Yes. Well, she is the typical Vietnamese mother. She wants me to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or an engineer.
Very practical.
Very practical. I did not know that there were any other options. I really didn't. I went to school at Wayne State University, and I was the first in my family to actually graduate from school. And it was a struggle because I realized there are other things that you can be.
They have all these other departments.
You can do so much more than be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer. My mom always said, "Oh, I want you to be happy and be a doctor." So absolutely. When I told my mom that I wanted to study psychology, she told me the people that study psychology need it the most. They're the ones that are crazy. I told her the first thing you learn in psychology is it's always your mother's fault. She loved that.
Take that, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you negotiate not being an engineer or doctor?
Well, I think my negotiation was I will study psychology and become a doctor.
Nice tactic.
Yes, that didn't pan out. I did go into, after graduation, I went into human resources and then marketing and then the nonprofit world.
And what's your mom's opinion of nonprofit?
When she found out I worked for a nonprofit, she asked me if I was going to get paid.
Well, it's sort of implied in
Yes,
the name, isn't
yes,
it? Yeah, sure.
it does sound it.
Yeah. So you work for APAC now.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
And that stands for?
Asian Pacific American Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. And what does that job entail?
So I represent, or I create relationships. So I create relationships between US-based companies and Asian-based companies. And they could be Asian-owned or they could be US-owned in Asian countries. Okay. So the relationships between those, we're talking about not just business-to-business relationships, but also we're talking about collaborations and partnerships, and we're talking about helping each other grow in the economy.
And so what kinds of projects do you have?
Well, we're opening up an office here in Grand Rapids, so we're really excited about that. We do have members here, and we want to make sure that we're serving our members here. So we're going to be opening up an office here in Grand Rapids. Some of the things that we do are we create networking events where there's an opportunity, facilitated networking, where you're not just going into a room cold and not knowing anybody.
Milling around.
Milling around,
like
right. We're going to do
cows.
some facilitating networking so that you walk away feeling like you did make a connection rather than walking around and just passing out your card
Right.
and hoping that somebody will call you back,
Yeah.
right. That often does not work.
Sure, sure. And so if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
They can reach me, they can find me on my website, apac.net. That's apacc.net.
Okay, wonderful. We'll put that on the screen for our viewers. Reflecting on your experience growing up as an immigrant refugee child, how does that inform your work today in your networking and your planning and your interactions?
Well, you know, like I said earlier, I grew up in two different worlds, my Vietnamese world and my American world. And when I went to Wayne State University, I joined an organization called Asian-American Professional Network. And this is where I was introduced to a world that both of those worlds coexisted together. Mm-hmm. And it felt like the first time I was home. It was like this moment, yeah. Like, wow, this exists, and you know, and who knew? I didn't. Yeah. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. You know, I think that the school district had 7 Asians, and all of those were my family. So it was very limited in regards to the diversity that I was exposed to. And having my Vietnamese world and my American world collide and work very seamlessly together was phenomenal. And I think that really is where I am again here with APAC, where my Asian community, my Asian world is working very seamlessly with the American U.S. Businesses, and it's a great opportunity for me to make sure that that feeling that I had in college, everybody feels that.
Wow, yeah, that's really significant. Last question to take it on home. The show is, the theme of our show is belonging. What's your understanding of that?
I think that your feeling of belonging really is to find where you fit. I think it's not somebody else's job to make you feel like you belong. I think it really is yours. There were a lot of times where I felt like I belonged in my very predominantly white neighborhood that I grew up with. It's very predominantly white and Jewish. I felt like I belonged there. I did not feel like I was an outsider. I even thought that I was going to have a bat mitzvah when I turned 13. You know, that's how much I felt like I belonged.
You were there, yeah.
I was there, and I felt like I belonged there. I didn't even realize, I didn't even fill out that I was a minority when I was applying for college because, again, I felt like I belonged, so I didn't feel out of place. I felt like I belonged in my Vietnamese community. In my speaking Vietnamese, eating pho before it was popular, before it was the trendy thing to do. Right. I felt like I belonged there. But I think that feeling like you belong, you find that little things that you don't have to fit perfectly in to belong. I think that you find the little things that make you happy, that where you do feel like you fit in yourself. It doesn't mean that somebody has to always include you to feel like you belong. I think that you belong where you want to belong.
So it probably involves fundamentally knowing who you are.
Who you are. And that takes a long time. I'm not going to lie. I thought I was Jewish growing up. So, you know.
The journey continues.
The journey continues.
Yeah.
It constantly is revolving.
Yeah, yeah. Duc, it's been an absolute delight talking with you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and be here in the studio.
Glad to be.
You bet. And thank you for joining us. If you're watching us on TV, stay tuned for our following segments on language and culture. If you're watching Feel Like You Belong on the internet, we hope you will share your feedback with us via our website and YouTube channel. And be sure to catch our many other stories about the dynamic immigrants making our national economy a more global market.